Okay, so um, today let's dive into something pretty important, the future.
Mm-hmm.
And not just in a general sense. We're talking about the future of our society and how that's connected to the future of business.
Yeah.
You sent over this report, Lost Boys, State of the Nation. It's from the Center for Social Justice.
Yes.
It really got me thinking, are we overlooking a whole generation of potential?
Yeah, it's a very important question. And, the report, it does paint a concerning picture
Yeah.
of the challenges young men in Britain are facing. And it's really across the board. The CSJ brought together data on employment, education, family dynamics, crime, health, even the influence of tech and pornography.
Right.
They're really trying to show us the bigger picture here.
So just how bleak is that picture? Some of these headlines talk about a lost generation.
Yeah.
I mean, is it really that dire?
Well, the report uses some strong language, right? It highlights that in 2024, over 15% of men aged 16 to 24 were NEET, not in education, employment, or training. And you compare that to young women,
Yeah.
it's around 11%.
Okay.
So we're looking at,
It's a big surge.
yeah, a huge difference.
Yeah, 40% surge in NEET young men since before the pandemic.
That's huge, EE. That's over 150,000 young men essentially missing from the workforce.
Yeah.
How does that impact businesses, the economy as a whole? What are we talking about here?
So the CSJ estimates
Mhm.
that if we were to really address this NEET problem, it could save the government 16 billion pounds over 5 years.
Wow.
That's a lot of lost tax revenue, increased welfare costs,
Right.
and really a generation that's not contributing to economic growth.
Right.
But it's not just about the numbers, right? It's about
Yeah.
if we're not preparing this generation for the workforce,
Yeah.
what happens to those industries that rely on skilled labor?
Exactly.
Construction, engineering, manufacturing sectors that have historically been dominated by men.
It seems like we're setting ourselves up for a shortage down the line, even as we're facing this NEET surge.
Yeah.
It's a paradox. Yeah, absolutely. And they also found a reversed gender pay gap for those who are working full-time
Okay.
between 16 and 24.
Interesting.
Young women are now out-earning their male peers,
Wow.
which raises questions about, social dynamics,
Right.
family structures,
Yeah.
and what this means for the long-term economic landscape.
Okay, so we've got this whole economic side of things.
Right.
But the report goes deeper into the reasons behind these trends.
Yeah.
And one that really stood out to me is education.
Yeah.
What's the data telling us there?
So the data is pretty stark. Only 60% of boys
Okay.
are considered school-ready at age 5,
Compared to?
compared to 75% of girls.
Okay.
And this gap continues throughout their education. Lower reading levels, lower test scores, less likely to go to university, twice as likely to be excluded from school.
That's pretty significant.
It is.
So is this a sign that the education system is failing boys?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there something more fundamental going on here? I mean, the cultural expectations, different learning styles, maybe societal pressures. What's the report say about this?
So the report doesn't give us one simple answer, but it highlights one very interesting point.
Okay.
41% of sixth form students have been taught that boys are a problem for society.
Oh, wow.
So think about that.
Yeah.
Being told that your gender is inherently problematic.
Yeah.
How does that impact a young man's self-esteem?
Right.
His motivation to succeed, his vision of his own future.
Yeah. It's got to have a ripple effect on everything.
Right.
Their education, their career choices, even just their interactions in the workplace.
Right.
It's like we're telling them they're set up to fail.
And that perception becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Yeah.
And if businesses are unconsciously carrying these biases, it can impact hiring practices, mentorship opportunities, even just how they're perceived and treated within a company.
So how do we even dismantle these perceptions? Is it about changing the education system? Changing the messaging?
Yeah.
Changing something within businesses themselves?
It's probably a combination of all of those things,
Right.
but I think the takeaway is if we want a thriving society, a robust economy,
Yeah.
we have to unlock the potential of this generation of young men.
It's about seeing them as a part of the solution,
Absolutely.
not the problem.
Yeah, and I think this report provides a framework for how we might start doing that.
Now, the report doesn't just stop at education. It talks about family structures, specifically the issue of fatherlessness. It says the UK has one of the highest rates of family breakdown.
Yeah.
In the developed world, almost half of children experience parental separation by age 14.
That's right, and the report emphasizes the impact of fatherlessness on boys,
Okay.
suggesting a strong link to negative outcomes,
Right.
like poor mental health, higher crime rates, lower educational attainment, and even things like obesity.
It's not about simplifying things or blaming anyone,
Right.
but trying to understand these
Just
factors.
trying to understand the bigger picture.
So what is the link between fatherlessness and these outcomes? Is it about a lack of role models, discipline, something else entirely? And how does this play into their future prospects,
Right.
both in society and in business?
That's what we're going to explore in our deep dive.
Okay.
But it does raise a very important question: what responsibility do businesses have
Yeah.
to support families, to encourage involved fatherhood, to create work environments that value family life? These are all issues that could have a significant impact on the future workforce.
Okay, let's move on to technology then.
Mm.
A double-edged sword.
It is.
All this talk about the opportunities it creates.
Yeah.
But this report delves into the risks that young men are facing online.
Yeah. And they focus on two main areas: pornography and gaming. And it's pretty alarming.
Yeah.
The average age children first see online pornography is 13,
Yeah.
and some are exposed as young as 9.
That's young.
And boys, statistically, are far more likely to be regular consumers of this type of content.
Yeah, so what kind of impact are we talking about? I mean, a generation growing up with constant access to this content.
Yeah.
It's got to be impacting their development,
Right.
their view of relationships, their mental health. I mean, what are we seeing?
So the report raises concerns about
Okay.
how this early exposure shapes young men's views of sex relationships,
Yeah.
even violence. They talk about things like pornography, addiction, sextortion, online violence, even the potential for radicalization.
That's pretty heavy stuff. How do we even begin to address these issues as a society, within businesses? We're talking about censorship, education, something else entirely.
It's a debate that deserves a lot more attention.
For sure.
But from a business perspective,
Yeah.
it raises questions about online safety,
Okay.
about creating respectful and inclusive work environments, and about understanding the potential impact of these online experiences on young men who are entering the workforce.
It sounds like we've got a lot to unpack here. This isn't just a report about lost boys.
Yeah.
It's a roadmap for the future, for both society and the businesses that shape it.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And the good news is the report doesn't just highlight the problems.
Okay, good.
It offers potential solutions too.
Well, then let's get into those. Stay tuned as we continue our deep dive into the Lost Boys report, exploring what we can all do to change the narrative and build a brighter future for everyone.
Absolutely.
So welcome back. We've been going through this Lost Boys report, and it's clear there's a lot on the line here.
Yeah.
Not just for these young men, but for the future of society and business.
Yeah.
In part 1, we laid out the problem.
Right.
But now let's try to figure out the WHY. What's at the root of all of this?
Well, one of the things this report does really well is that it shows us there's no single cause.
Right.
There's no magic bullet explanation for this.
It's complex.
It's a combination of things: cultural shifts, economic realities, families changing, and even just how technology shapes young people's lives.
Yeah, it's a lot of pieces to this puzzle.
Right.
So let's start putting some of these pieces together. We talked a lot about education, those gaps between boys and girls in school.
Right.
School readiness, academic achievement, even being excluded from school. Why do we think these gaps exist?
So one interesting point they make is that the traditional classroom environment, with its emphasis on sitting still, listening quietly, following instructions, it may not be the best fit for all boys.
Right.
And I think the point here isn't that boys can't or shouldn't learn in a structured setting, but that different students learn in different ways.
Right. Everyone's different.
Exactly.
So are they saying we need to just get rid of traditional classrooms then?
Well, not necessarily. They highlight things like apprenticeships, vocational training mentorship programs. These offer more hands-on practical experiences, which may be a better fit for boys who learn best in a more active, experiential setting.
And businesses could benefit from this too, right?
Absolutely. If we're worried about skills gaps, why not invest in training that actually,
meets people where they are.
Meets people where they are.
Caters to different types of learners.
Exactly.
It's recognizing there are different paths to success, not just the traditional academic one.
I think that's a really important point.
And the report also mentions male role models in education.
Yeah.
I mean, the vast majority of teachers, especially in those early years,
Yeah.
are women. Some boys may not see themselves in that.
I think that's a valid point. If you're not seeing men
Yeah.
in positions of authority, in positions where learning is valued,
Yeah.
it's hard to envision yourself fitting into that space.
That's like a missing piece
Right.
in how you see yourself.
It's a missing piece of that puzzle of identity. You need to see yourself reflected in the world.
To really buy into it.
To really believe in your potential. And that's not just in education, that's in every part of life.
Which brings us to fatherlessness.
Yeah.
This report paints a pretty concerning picture of families breaking down.
Right.
Especially the impact that has on boys.
It's definitely a sensitive topic.
Yeah.
But it's one we can't avoid. The report actually quotes a mother of 2 teenage boys.
Okay.
She says, I talk to them a lot about how they feel society views them. They feel that they are viewed as predators, lazy and toxic, but are told frequently that they are privileged.
Wow. That's
It's a powerful statement.
yeah, to grow up with that feeling
Right.
hanging over your head.
And this sense of being judged, of being misunderstood,
Yeah.
even demonized, I think, for many young men.
Yeah.
This is made worse by the lack of a positive male role model in their life.
So is the answer just bringing fathers back into the picture?
Mm.
Or is it recognizing that families come in all shapes and sizes these days,
Yeah.
and that support and guidance can come from other places too?
I think that's a really important distinction. The report highlights the importance of fathers, especially for things like setting boundaries,
Yeah.
discipline, offering that emotional support,
Right.
being that steady presence. But it also acknowledges
Yeah.
that we need broader support. We need strong communities,
Right.
mentorship programs, positive male role models in schools, in businesses, in our neighborhoods.
Creating that network.
Yeah, that web of support.
And that's where businesses can come in too.
Absolutely.
Creating family-friendly workplaces, flexible work arrangements, opportunities for mentorship.
Yep.
All of that contributes to a more supportive environment,
Absolutely.
whether they come from a traditional family or not.
Exactly.
Let's shift gears a bit and talk about technology.
Okay.
I mean, we all know it can be good and bad.
Right, a double-edged sword.
But the report really dives into those risks young men are facing online,
Yeah.
especially with pornography and gaming.
The statistics are pretty concerning.
Yeah.
I mean, we already talked about how young kids are when they first see pornography online.
Right, and how boys are more likely to see it.
And statistically more likely to be regularly consuming it.
So what kind of impact are we talking about? This is a generation growing up with constant access
Right.
to content that's often, violent and degrading.
Right.
What does that do to their understanding of healthy relationships,
Yeah.
their expectations of women, even their own self-image?
So the report talks about some potential consequences.
Okay.
Things like pornography addiction,
Right.
sextortion, online violence, even radicalization.
It raises some big questions.
Yeah, about how this early exposure
Yeah.
might contribute to a culture of misogyny, aggression, and just unrealistic expectations about sex and relationships.
These are some serious issues that we can't just ignore.
We can't.
But what's the solution?
Yeah.
Censorship? Education?
Mhm.
How do we even begin to address this?
It's complex. There's no easy answer.
Right.
But the report suggests education is key.
Okay.
We need to be having open and honest conversations with young men about the risks of online pornography,
Yeah.
about healthy relationships,
Okay.
about consent and respect.
It's about giving them the tools
Right.
to navigate this digital world.
To make informed choices,
Yeah.
to recognize harmful content and situations.
Exactly. And from a business perspective,
Yeah.
what are we talking about?
It raises questions about online safety,
Okay.
about creating respectful and inclusive work environments,
Right?
and really just recognizing how these online experiences can impact the young men who are coming into the workforce.
It's a whole new world.
It is. The lines are blurred between the real and the virtual.
I like that. And this report, this Lost Boys report, it reminds us we can't just focus on the economic or educational parts of this.
Right.
We need to address the whole person.
The whole person, the whole environment.
Yeah, and see how these challenges are all connected.
Absolutely.
It's about understanding these young men,
Yeah.
the real-life experiences shaping their choices.
Not just the statistics,
Yeah.
but the real people behind those numbers.
And that's what we'll look at in the next part of our deep dive.
That's right.
We'll explore solutions, concrete steps we can take
Mm-hmm.
as individuals, as communities, as businesses
Yeah.
to address this crisis.
And hopefully create a brighter future for everyone.
All right, so welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent the last couple parts really getting into this Lost Boys report.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
It's heavy stuff, right?
Yeah.
But we can't just ignore it. We've seen the data,
Right.
explored some of the causes, and now the big question, what can we actually do about this?
I think it's easy to feel a bit overwhelmed by the scale of it all.
Right.
But the report doesn't just leave us hanging.
Yeah.
It actually offers a lot of solutions, a lot of concrete recommendations.
Okay, so that's good to hear.
Yeah.
So where do we even start? If we're going to turn this ship around, what are the first steps?
One of the key takeaways is that it's a societal problem.
Right.
So it needs a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
We're not just talking about government policies or school curriculums. It's about cultural shifts, community initiatives, changes within families, workplaces, even online spaces.
So it's a call to action for everyone.
That really is. We all have a part to play.
Okay, so the report breaks down its recommendations into 6 key areas.
Yeah.
Kind of mirroring what we've been talking about: employment,
Right.
education, family, crime, health, and tech.
Exactly.
So let's dive into each of those and see what we can actually do.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's start with employment. Equipping young men with the skills they need to succeed in today's job market. How do we even begin to bridge that gap?
So one big focus is on apprenticeships
Okay.
and vocational training. These programs offer hands-on experience,
Right.
which, as we talked about, can be really valuable for those boys
Yeah.
who maybe don't thrive in a more traditional academic setting.
And the report specifically mentions
Yeah.
apprenticeships in fields like construction, engineering, manufacturing.
Right, those sectors facing shortages.
Exactly.
And it's about recognizing that, a successful career doesn't always have to start with a university degree.
Yes, sir.
There are lots of different paths, and we need to provide those options.
The report also mentions, robust career counseling and guidance,
Yeah.
starting even in secondary school.
Early intervention.
Yeah, it seems like that's a key theme here.
It is helping them identify their strengths early on, exploring different career paths,
Okay.
developing a plan for their future.
Yeah.
These are all important steps.
And what about businesses? How can they be part of the solution here?
Businesses have a huge opportunity to make a difference.
How so?
Partnering with schools and training programs to create apprenticeships, internships.
Okay.
That's one way. They can also offer mentoring programs,
Right.
connecting young men with experienced professionals in their field, investing in training and development programs for young employees.
So it's about
Yeah.
creating those pathways for young men to enter the workforce
Right.
and then equipping them with the skills to thrive.
Exactly. Now, moving on to education.
Okay.
The report has several suggestions for how to better support boys in school.
Mm-hmm.
One that stands out is creating more boy-friendly learning environments.
Okay, I'm curious about that. What does that even look like? Beanbag chairs and video games?
Not quite, but it does involve recognizing that boys and girls
Yeah.
often learn differently.
Right.
So things like incorporating more movement,
Right.
more physical activity into the school day,
Right.
more hands-on project-based learning,
Okay.
using technology in ways that really engage them.
So tailoring the approach but still keeping it challenging.
Right, maintaining high expectations, but just delivering it
Right.
in a way that works best.
They also talk about the reading gap.
Yes, a huge issue. Boys are consistently behind girls in reading.
Right, and that affects everything else.
Impacts their performance across all subjects.
So how do we fix that?
Well, encouraging fathers and male role models to read to young boys
Okay.
from an early age is a great start.
Makes sense.
Giving them access to books that they're actually interested in and using technology to make reading more engaging, more interactive.
And then there's that big point about challenging the narrative
Absolutely.
that boys are the problem.
Remember that statistic, 41% of sixth form students have been taught
Wow, yeah.
that boys are a problem for society? We have to counteract that.
Yeah,
We need to highlight the positive contributions of men and boys,
right.
celebrate those positive male role models,
Okay.
encourage kindness and compassion,
Yeah.
foster a culture of respect and equality.
It's about changing the way we see them,
Right?
both as society and in the workplace.
Seeing them as assets, not problems.
Yeah.
Valuable contributors.
Okay, shifting gears to family.
Okay.
The report emphasizes strengthening families and supporting fathers.
Mm-hmm.
What do they recommend there?
One thing I really support is making relationship education,
Okay.
a mandatory part of the school curriculum.
Interesting.
Teaching young people,
Yeah.
both boys and girls. Right.
The skills they need to build healthy relationships.
That's such a valuable skill.
And it's often overlooked.
Yeah, for sure.
And the report also recommends providing more support for couples who are struggling.
Like what kind of support?
Things like couples counseling, parenting classes,
Okay.
even financial assistance in some cases.
Recognizing that strong families are good for everyone.
Right, the foundation of a strong society.
And businesses can play a role here too.
They can.
Offering flexible work arrangements, on-site childcare.
Yeah, creating that culture that values work-life balance.
Showing that employees have lives outside of work.
It's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about crime.
Right.
The report draws a link between fatherlessness,
Yeah.
poverty, and crime. What are they suggesting we do about this?
Invest in early intervention programs,
Okay.
especially in disadvantaged communities.
What kinds of programs?
Things like after-school programs, mentoring initiatives, job training programs.
Giving them a path. Right.
Giving them positive alternative.
So they don't fall into that cycle.
Exactly. And they also talk about the need for better rehabilitation programs
Okay.
for young offenders.
So what does that look like?
Providing education and job training while they're incarcerated,
Right.
and then helping them reintegrate into society once they're released.
Breaking that cycle.
Yeah, giving them a real second chance.
And businesses can play a role here too.
They can by being willing to hire ex-offenders.
Right. Giving them that opportunity.
That second chance to be productive members of society.
Okay. Moving on to health. The report paints a pretty bleak picture about the state of young men's health.
High rates of obesity, suicide, mental health problems.
Yeah. So how do we address this?
Prevention and early intervention are key here as well.
Like with so many other things.
Yeah, the report recommends promoting healthy lifestyles from a young age.
Okay.
Encouraging physical activity, teaching healthy eating habits, providing access to mental health services.
You're eating a culture
where well-being is valued.
both physical and mental.
And we need to destigmatize mental health.
Absolutely. Especially for men.
Right.
Creating safe spaces for them to talk about their feelings.
And to seek help.
And seek help when they need it.
And businesses can play a role in that too.
Yeah.
Providing mental health resources, promoting well-being, offering those flexible work arrangements.
And absolutely.
So people can prioritize their health.
Exactly.
All right, lastly, let's talk about technology.
Okay.
We all know it can be risky, especially for young men.
Right. The report highlights those risks.
Especially with pornography and gaming. What do we do about it?
I think education is really key here.
Okay.
We have to give young people more information about the potential dangers online.
Right. Teaching them about safety?
About online safety, privacy, responsible technology use.
It's about giving them the knowledge to make good choices.
Right. Empowering them to be informed digital citizens.
And what about these tech companies? I mean, they have to be part of the solution too.
They do. We need to hold them accountable for the content
Right.
they're hosting and promoting.
So are we talking about regulations then?
Possibly stricter regulations, age verification systems,
Okay.
better enforcement of existing laws, that kind of thing.
And businesses can also promote responsible tech use.
Absolutely.
Training employees on safety and privacy, maybe even advocating for policy changes.
Right, that protect young people online.
This report, it's not just doom and gloom.
Right.
It's actually full of potential solutions.
It's a roadmap.
A roadmap. Yeah.
It's a call to action for all of us.
Right. Not just one group or another.
Individuals, families, communities, businesses, policymakers.
Everyone.
Everyone needs to step up and support this next generation.
We've covered a lot today.
We have.
Hopefully this has given you a better understanding of what's going on and, more importantly, what we can do about it.
If there's one thing I hope people take away from this,
Yeah.
it's that there is hope. We can turn this around.
But it's going to take all of us?
Working together.
So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
What role will you play in supporting these young men?
We encourage everyone to read the full report.
Yeah.
Get involved with organizations that are trying to make a difference.
The future isn't set in stone. We can shape it.
We can.
So let's create a future where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.